Black woman stopped from entering her private jet cabin crew, fired when they learned she's royalty. What would you do if someone tried to strip away your dignity, only to discover they had completely underestimated you? This is the story of Amara Daniels, a poised and humble leader whose grace and determination transformed an act of prejudice into a powerful lesson for all. Amara, a philanthropist and global advocate for education and women's rights, found herself at the center of an incident that exposed deeply rooted biases. On what seemed like an ordinary day at a private airfield, her calm presence was met with skepticism, assumptions, and an outright challenge to her rightful place. Little did they know, the woman they doubted wasn't just a passenger, she was royalty. This isn't just a story, it's a wake-up call. It's a reminder of the resilience it takes to stand tall in the face of injustice, and the power of transformation when we confront prejudice head-on. If you believe in the strength of justice, persistence, and change, stay with us. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to join us on this journey through one of the most remarkable stories of resilience and courage. And now, let's dive into the moment that set everything into motion. Amara Daniels stopped from boarding her own private jet, a moment that would not only challenge her patience, but also become a catalyst for change. Amara Daniels is no ordinary figure. Born into a lineage of leadership and legacy, she is a princess from the Kingdom of Cumbia, a progressive West African nation celebrated for its rich cultural heritage and steadfast dedication to progress. The kingdom, having risen from the challenges of its colonial past, now stands as a beacon of resilience and transformation, a story that mirrors Amara's own journey. From a young age, Amara was taught that her privilege was not a pedestal, but a platform, a tool to uplift those in need. Guided by her family's values, she embraced her role as more than just a figurehead. Instead, she became a global advocate for education, healthcare, and women's rights, dedicating her life to addressing inequalities and empowering underserved communities. Balancing the demands of royalty and philanthropy is no small feat, but Amara has made it her mission. One day she might be attending high-profitable summits or royal galas, and the next she could be visiting rural villages to ensure her initiatives are creating tangible impact. Her work transcends borders, driven by her unwavering belief that no one should be left behind, no matter their circumstances. On this particular day, Amara's journey wasn't about luxury or leisure. The sleek private jet waiting for her at the airfield was more than just transportation. It was carrying vital healthcare supplies funded by her efforts, destined for communities in need. This was a continuation of her lifelong commitment to making a difference. As Amara stepped out of the black SUV onto the tarmac, her presence commanded quiet admiration. Dressed in an elegant yet understated coat, her posture exuded confidence without arrogance. Her composed demeanor and graceful movements were a testament to the poise of someone accustomed to balancing immense responsibility with humility. But what awaited her at the steps of the jet would challenge her resolve in ways she hadn't anticipated. Unbeknownst to those present, the seemingly ordinary moment of boarding a flight would soon become an extraordinary test of her patience, dignity, and unyielding spirit. The late afternoon sun bathed the private airfield in a warm, golden glow as Amara Daniels stepped out of her sleek black SUV. She moved with a quiet confidence, her tailored cream coat flowing gracefully with her every step. Her understated elegance caught the attention of onlookers, though she paid them no mind. For Amara, this was just another mission in her tireless pursuit of helping others. Her assistant, Jared, and a small security team followed closely, their presence subtle but reassuring. At the base of the jet's stairs, Rachel Simons, a flight attendant on duty, took notice of Amara's approach. Rachel's practiced smile faltered for a moment as her eyes flicked over Amara's modest yet impeccable attire. Her expression shifted into something less welcoming, a mixture of doubt and condescension. It was a look Amara had encountered countless times before, a silent question of whether she truly belonged in spaces like these. Amara approached calmly, her head held high. Jared stepped forward to confirm the boarding arrangements with Rachel, who seemed skeptical. "I'm sorry," Rachel said curtly, "but I'll need proper identification before I can allow her to board." Jared's brow furrowed slightly, but his voice remained measured. "Miss Daniels is the owner of this jet," he explained firmly. "There shouldn't be any confusion here." Rachel's eyes narrowed as she glanced back at Amara. "Owner?" she echoed, her tone laced with disbelief. "I wasn't informed of this. I'll need to verify her claim. It's protocol." Amara's expression remained composed, though her deep brown eyes hinted at the weariness of someone too familiar with such moments. "Is this standard procedure?" she asked softly, her voice calm but resolute. Rachel hesitated, visibly uncomfortable under Amara's unwavering gaze. "We've had issues with unauthorized individuals trying to access private flights," she said defensively. "Without proper documentation, I cannot let her board." Jared's frustration was evident now. "This is her aircraft," he reiterated, his tone firm. "She doesn't need to provide additional documentation. Please, allow us to board. We're on a tight schedule." Rachel crossed her arms, her posture stiff with defiance. "I'm sorry, but rules are rules," she insisted, her words implying a deeper bias. It wasn't just about the rules. It was about questioning whether Amara, a black woman, truly belonged in this space of privilege. The exchange drew the attention of nearby staff, their curious glances adding to the tension. Despite the growing audience, Amara remained poised, choosing silence over confrontation. Her calm presence was deliberate, a quiet assertion of her dignity. But Rachel's persistence escalated the situation. She called for security, citing non-compliance. When the guards arrived, their approach was hesitant, sensing the gravity of the situation. Rachel's voice hardened as she directed them. "Escort her off the premises if she refuses to cooperate," she instructed, her tone betraying a smug satisfaction. One of the guards placed a firm hand on Amara's arm. Jared immediately protested, his voice rising in defense of his employer. "This is outrageous. Do you know who you're dealing with?" he demanded. But Amara gently raised a hand, signaling him to stop. "It's fine," she said softly, her composure unshaken. She allowed the guards to lead her away, her footsteps steady and deliberate. The murmurs among the staff and bystanders grew louder as the scene unfolded. Rachel watched from the steps of the jet, her arms crossed and a triumphant expression on her face. Yet beneath her veneer of confidence, a flicker of unease crossed her features. The weight of the moment and the whispers from her colleagues began to chip away at her certainty. "You didn't take a little hat shot from the man hired up to everything else, did you?" Meanwhile, Amara was taken to a holding room at the airfield. She sat quietly, her hands resting on the polished metal table, her expression serene, despite the sting of the moment. Jared, pacing nearby, vented his frustration. "This is beyond unacceptable," he muttered. "How can they treat you like this?" Amara's voice, calm yet resolute, broke the tension. "Jared," she said, "this isn't the first time. It won't be the last. But how we respond defines who we are." While Jared made phone calls to escalate the situation, Amara's silence spoke volumes. She wasn't just standing up for herself, she was standing up against the biases and prejudices that countless others face every day. Back on the tarmac, Rachel's unease grew as whispers about Amara's true identity began to circulate among the staff. Little did Rachel know, her actions had already set in motion events that would not only challenge her assumptions, but also change the course of her career. The truth about who Amara Daniels was and the dignity she carried was about to be revealed. The holding room was cold and sterile, but Amara Daniels sat with quiet composure, her hands resting lightly on the polished metal table. Jared paced nearby, his frustration bubbling over as he muttered under his breath about the injustice of it all. Amara, however, remained serene, her calm demeanor masking the simmering emotions beneath. She reached for her phone and made a single call, her voice measured and professional. "This is Amara Daniels," she said. "I'd like to speak with the Regional Director of Avalon Jet Management regarding an incident involving my aircraft." As she ended the call, Jared's pacing came to an abrupt halt. "They'll regret this," he said, his tone sharp with indignation. "How dare they treat you like this? They have no idea who you are, what you've done." Mara interrupted gently, her voice calm but firm. Jared, this isn't about who I am. It's about what they believe someone like me cannot be. Meanwhile, back at the jet, whispers were spreading among the crew. The revelation that Amara was not just a passenger but the owner of the aircraft sent ripples of disbelief through the staff. Rachel Simons, standing stiffly at the steps of the jet, began to feel the weight of her actions. Her colleagues avoided her gaze, their uneasy glances a silent indictment. It wasn't long before Oliver Grant, the regional director of Avalon Jet Management, arrived. His tailored suit and polished demeanor conveyed authority, but his expression was one of concern. He walked briskly toward the holding room, his mind racing through the damage control he would need to implement. When he entered, he found Amara seated calmly, her gaze steady. Jared, still visibly agitated, stood protectively beside her. Oliver cleared his throat, introducing himself. "Miss Daniels," he began, his voice smooth but nervous. "I am Oliver Grant, Regional Director for Avalon Jet Management. On behalf of the company, I must extend my sincerest apologies for the events that have transpired today." Amara inclined her head slightly, acknowledging his words without speaking. Oliver continued, "I take full responsibility for the actions of my staff. The behavior you were subjected to is inexcusable and does not reflect the values of our company. Effective immediately, the flight attendant in question has been suspended pending a full investigation." Jared folded his arms, unimpressed. "Suspension?" he said, his voice laced with disbelief. "That's it? After what she's done, she gets a slap on the wrist?" Amara raised a hand, signaling Jared to step back. She turned her gaze to Oliver, her tone calm but resolute. "Mr. Grant," she said, "suspension may address her actions, but what about the system that allowed this to happen? Would she have asked the same of someone else? Someone who didn't look like me?" Her words struck Oliver like a blow. He hesitated, then nodded solemnly. "You're right, Miss Daniels," he admitted. "This incident is indicative of a deeper issue, and I assure you we will take steps to address it. Bias training and systemic changes will be implemented immediately." Amara's expression softened slightly, though her resolve remained. "I'm not interested in empty promises, Mr. Grant. Words without action are meaningless. I'll be watching closely to ensure that change happens, not just for me, but for everyone who comes after me. The company's growing faster than we can afford to maintain." Meanwhile, back at the jet, Rachel's suspension was announced to the crew. She stood frozen, her face pale as the gravity of the situation sank in. One of her colleagues, Daniel, approached hesitantly. "Rachel," he said quietly, "you made a mistake. Maybe it's time to reflect on why." Rachel's jaw tightened, her instinct to defend herself clashing with the nagging realization that her actions had consequences. The word bias echoed in her mind, a glaring accusation that was impossible to ignore. As the day wore on, Amara and Jared returned to the tarmac, where her jet was now ready for departure. The murmurs of the crowd quieted as she ascended the steps with grace, her presence commanding respect. Rachel watched from a distance, her posture stiff with a mixture of anger and regret. Before boarding, Amara paused at the top of the stairs. She turned back, her voice calm but firm. "Miss Simons," she said, her tone carrying the weight of the moment. "I hope you take this experience as a lesson not just about your job, but about how you see people. Assumptions can hurt others, and they can cost you everything." Rachel didn't respond, her face a mix of defiance and shame. Amara didn't wait for a reply. She stepped into the jet, her poise unshaken, her dignity intact. Inside, Jared looked at her, his expression softening. "You handled that with more grace than anyone else could have," he said. Amara offered a faint smile. "Grace isn't optional, Jared," she replied. "It's necessary, especially when the world expects you to lose it." As the jet prepared for takeoff, Oliver Grant returned to his office, already drafting plans for mandatory bias training and stricter protocols to prevent such incidents in the future. For Amara, this wasn't just about seeking justice for herself. It was about ensuring that no one else would have to endure what she had. The fight wasn't over, but Amara had turned a moment of injustice into a catalyst for change. Her calm, her resilience, and her unwavering commitment to justice were proof that dignity could prevail, even in the face of ignorance. The events at the private airfield revealed more than just a single instance of misconduct. They uncovered the persistence of prejudice and bias in spaces that pride themselves on exclusivity and professionalism. Amara Daniels' experience was a stark reminder that microaggressions, subtle, often unintentional acts of discrimination are still pervasive, even in environments designed to exude refinement and equality. For Amara, this wasn't an isolated incident. It was yet another chapter in a lifetime of navigating spaces where her presence was questioned. She had faced similar moments in boardrooms, at diplomatic events, and even during philanthropic missions. These experiences were not new, but they were no less painful. Each microaggression reopened old wounds, reminding her of how far society still had to go. Yet what set Amara apart was her ability to transform indignity into a catalyst for systemic change. In the face of humiliation, she didn't react with anger or outrage. Instead, she responded with calm resolve, choosing to focus on justice rather than revenge. Her grace under pressure turned what could have been a fleeting moment of prejudice into a powerful lesson that rippled far beyond the tarmac. The incident brought to light the subtle yet harmful ways bias manifests in modern professional settings. Rachel Simons, the flight attendant, didn't see herself as prejudiced. Her actions were justified in her mind as protocol, but they were deeply rooted in assumptions about who Amara was, or rather, who Rachel believed she couldn't be. The insistence on additional documentation, the refusal to listen to Amara's assistant, and the escalation to security all stemmed from implicit bias. For people of color, especially women like Amara, these microaggressions are an exhausting reality. They are asked to prove themselves repeatedly, their competence and legitimacy questioned in ways their peers may never experience. These subtle acts, though not overtly hostile, erode trust and dignity, creating barriers that are as damaging as they are invisible. What made Amara's response remarkable was her refusal to let the incident define her. She didn't allow Rachel's actions to provoke an emotional outburst or cloud her judgment. Instead, she remained composed, knowing that her silence and measured words carried far more weight than anger ever could. Her decision to escalate the matter through proper channels wasn't just about addressing her own mistreatment. It was about ensuring that no one else would have to endure what she did. Amara's resilience wasn't born from indifference. It was the product of a lifetime of experience, a quiet strength that refused to let prejudice win. When Amara posed the powerful question, "Would you ask the same of someone else?" she exposed the heart of the matter. Her words forced everyone present, including Rachel, to confront their own biases. By focusing on justice and systemic change, Amara turned a personal affront into a broader fight for equity. For Rachel Simons, the fallout was swift and humbling. Her suspension, announced by Avalon Jet Management, came with the requirement to complete mandatory bias training. The word bias loomed large, forcing her to confront a reality she had long ignored. Rachel's insistence on following protocol had blinded her to the deeper implications of her actions. As she sat alone in the employee lounge, Rachel began to reflect on how her assumptions had not only hurt Amara, but also jeopardized her own career. She realized that the small decisions she had made in that moment, the hesitation, the skepticism, the refusal to listen, stemmed from unconscious biases she hadn't acknowledged. The suspension wasn't just a punishment, it was an opportunity for Rachel to change. Bias training would challenge her to see beyond surface-level judgments, to question her assumptions, and to approach her role with greater empathy and awareness. For Rachel, this was a reckoning, but it was also a chance for growth. Oliver Grant, the regional director of Avalon Jet Management, understood that this incident wasn't just a failure on Rachel's part. It was a reflection of the company's broader shortcomings in addressing diversity and inclusion. As he sat in his office reviewing the day's events, Oliver felt the weight of responsibility. Avalon prided itself on being progressive, but the incident with Amara revealed blind spots that needed immediate attention. Oliver wasted no time in commissioning a comprehensive training program aimed at preventing such incidents in the future. This program would go beyond surface-level diversity initiatives, focusing instead on addressing unconscious bias, fostering inclusion, and creating a culture of respect. Additionally, Oliver ordered a thorough review of the company's protocols to ensure they couldn't be weaponized against individuals based on assumptions. He understood that true change required more than words. It required action, accountability, and a commitment to doing better. Amara's story resonated far beyond the airfield. It became a symbol of the work still needed to dismantle systemic prejudice. Her poise and determination inspired others to confront their own biases and advocate for change in their own circles. For Amara, the incident was a reminder of the persistence of the fight. Despite her status, her accomplishments, and her unwavering commitment to justice, she was still subjected to the same biases that countless others face daily. Yet, she didn't let this reality discourage her. Instead, she used it as fuel to push for a world where dignity and respect are not privileges, but rights. By the time the jet lifted off, Amara had already turned the page. The exhaustion of the day weighed on her, but so did a quiet sense of accomplishment. She had faced yet another battle, and she had emerged stronger, her dignity intact. Rachel's suspension, the new training program, and Oliver's commitment to systemic change were steps in the right direction. They didn't erase what had happened, but they laid the groundwork for a future where such incidents might become less common. As Amara looked out the window at the fading horizon, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. She wasn't just fighting for herself. She was fighting for a world where no one would have to endure what she had. Her resilience, grace, and determination had turned a moment of prejudice into a powerful push for progress. Amara's story reminds us that change doesn't happen overnight, but every act of resilience, every call for justice, and every step toward accountability brings us closer to a better, fairer world. Amara Daniels' story is more than a tale of mistaken identity or a moment of prejudice. It's a testament to the power of dignity, resilience, and grace in confronting injustice. Despite facing bias in a space where she not only belonged, but excelled, Amara refused to let anger dictate her response. Instead, she stood firm, using her voice and presence to challenge assumptions and inspire change. This story highlights the importance of persistence in the fight for justice. Amara's calm but resolute demeanor reminds us that the battle against prejudice isn't won through a single act of defiance. It's a lifelong commitment to standing tall, demanding accountability, and creating opportunities for meaningful change. Her actions serve as a beacon of hope for a world where respect and inclusion are no longer privileges but universal rights. Amara's experience also sheds light on the microaggressions that people of color, especially women, endure daily. It's a call to action for all of us to reflect on our own biases and the ways they may unconsciously shape our decisions and interactions. Her story underscores the need for systemic change, but also the role individuals play in making that change possible. As we close this chapter, let us carry forward the lessons Amara's story has taught us. Every act of grace in the face of adversity, every voice raised against injustice, and every step toward inclusion brings us closer to a more equitable world. This isn't just Amara's fight, it's a fight for all of us to champion. If this story moved you, inspired you, or made you think, take a moment to reflect. How can you contribute to making the spaces around you more inclusive and just? Share your thoughts in the comments, and let's continue the conversation. And don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share this story with those who need to hear it. Together, we can amplify the voices of resilience and justice, sparking meaningful change, one story at a time. That's a wonderful background on Bob's story.